Hello, I'm Micah, and I'm a junior in the software engineering program at UNCW, and I'm here to ask the question, how do you see God in the subject you study? Specifically, how do you see him interacting, working, or any of it? Thank you.
I think there's been some people who have written recently that really, through art, sort of the beauty of Christ is and can be proclaimed pretty clearly.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to Meet the Prof. I'm Shane Hartley, and my friend Spence Hackney and I collect questions from college students, like you just heard, and then we ask them to Christian professors in an interview. And our hope is to encourage Christ-centered conversations on the college campus. And thank you so much for joining us. I just want to start with saying that we're very honored that you would tune in now, and if this is your first time, welcome. And we will be able to hear from Robbie Quinn in this interview. So, Dr. Quinn is a professor of art education at East Carolina University, an associate professor. And I think the thing that was most surprising to me in this was not only his story of stepping out in faith, taking some risks in college, but now how he encourages college students to do the same thing, and the effect that can have on social health. So I think you'll like his story and his challenge about that. And before we get started, would you please help by thinking of someone you could share this with, a college student, or it could be a professor or someone who loves a college student, a parent. And please like or follow or subscribe wherever you are listening to this. And so enjoy this interview now with Robbie Quinn. Robbie, welcome to the podcast. How you doing today?
Hey, doing great, Shane. Thanks. How are
I'm,
you?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm so excited about this time to get to talk to you. So I have an immediate question that came from your profile on meettheprof.com. You said in there that you at one point lived underground. Please tell more. What in the world are you talking about?
Yeah, I know it probably conjures up images of Bilbo Baggins at Bag End or something, but it wasn't exactly like that. When my parents purchased the piece of property on which we built our house, they kind of went in phases. So they built the basement on this property, which had a front that was exposed and sides that were entirely underground. And the vision was at some point in time in the near future, that would be the basement, and then they would build the upper levels on top of that. Um, so I ended up living underground essentially.
Your parents
Wow.
didn't have to worry about you sneaking out either, right? Since there's no doors and windows, there's just the one way in. So you could keep that guarded and your children stayed in the house. That's beautiful. I might move to an underground
That's
bunker. That sounds
beautiful.
like a
I
great
love
idea.
that.
That was probably their real concern. They really had no desire for a basement.
Nah,
They didn't
just a
trust you for
nice
3 years.
contained children.
Talk to us some about your journey when you were a college student with deciding the direction you would go in life. I think that's one of the main questions a lot of students are asking these days. How did they decide on a career or a direction? What was that like for you?
I think that when I was a high school student, I was in just about every art class our high school offered, and I loved it. And when I got into Young Harris College and started taking art classes there, um, I found that I was a little bit like sort of ill prepared for some of the things that I experienced there. And so I kind of felt really kind of supercharged about being an art teacher at that point in time. And to think back about how I built myself as an artist, and then sort of take what pieces I felt were missing from going into art classes in college, and see where it might be that I could try to formulate an art teaching, an art classroom, an art teaching experience that would be rewarding for my future students. And at that point in time, I had a chance to teach an art class in college at the place I was getting my master's. And I was just like, oh, this is it, man. I was
Hmm.
hooked, you know?
I'm curious, like, at what point you would say you began really owning your Christian faith on yourself, and even specifically, if there were any major turning points or key points of spiritual transformation for you.
I had such incredible godly men who mentored me. When I was having trouble with a lady friend who I had become enamored with, whose faith was not Orthodox Christian in any respect, and they invited me to inspect the truths of the Scripture for myself and see why I believed what I believe. Certainly, that's continued in my life as an adult believer. Making sure that I have men who are older and wiser and have been believers for longer than me who would provide me with good counsel. That's a really important piece of being in Christian community. And it's been so incredible to see how God has used that to shape and fashion me into his image in some small way.
So if you're an 18-year-old college student and you're hungry for people like that in your life, you're hungry for mentors, how do you go finding them? What would you say?
Um, what we're kind of having a conversation about here with Meet the Prof is a really important thing that I would draw any student to. I try to include the link to my Meet the Prof profile in my emails. I put it in my syllabus.
Cool.
So, students can always click on that. Other professors can pass that along to their students in whatever way they feel is appropriate. I would just certainly encourage young students who are going off to college to get involved in a local church, to seek out opportunities to be mentored by folks at those local churches, and then certainly the on-campus campus ministries have sort of connection points for students to get connected to mentors, either the campus ministers themselves or some additional folks who those campus ministers might recommend.
Good stuff. Thanks for that
I think
advice.
that's really
for sure.
helpful. How have you seen evidence for God in your own field?
And I think there's been some people who have written recently that really, through art, sort of the beauty of Christ is and can be proclaimed pretty clearly, and we have an opportunity as artists to beautify our world, and that's a reflection of maybe even though folks might not be Christians when they beautify the world, it's a way in which they're sort of drawing attention to the beauty of our Creator. I've been really encouraged by the field of art education. There's a wide variety of sort of interest groups in our national organization for art educators. And one of those is the Caucus for the Spiritual in Art. This is, kind of a little bit of a nebulous concept in terms of, religion or a relationship with Christ. Just kind of the fact that the door is open there, there's interest from folks in our field about exploring issues of spirituality. I just take that as an incredible opportunity. Folks who, like me, have a way to speak into and share with others who might have, different perspectives about spirituality. It's really an encouragement to me. And then kind of more personally to me, perhaps, in terms of my scholarly research, I was able to, over the course of many years, I was able to write a text sort of designed for introduction to art classes. Art appreciation is how they might be called at most colleges. In that particular textbook, I was able to weave all kinds of, stories about biblical art, which are just, there is a plethora of those throughout the millennia. And man, it was just really a neat opportunity for I could, just basically explain the story of the gospel, and sort of detailing what informed a particular artist's portrayal of a biblical story or a biblical figure. So I was really thankful about that.
So, are there any students, you don't have to name names, but are there any students that have stood out to you that were particularly memorable to you?
One of them is a student who, after going out and teaching art in the public schools for a while, came back and did her doctorate with us. Sorry, her master's with us. And it was really, really special to be able to sort of see that, growth in her, and then to be able to see her conduct her research and be able to write so well and articulate her philosophy and theory of art education in such succinct ways, and to see her working with our undergraduate students. So those kinds of students have come across several instances, and I think those are the ones that really stand out to me as folks who, you sort of see, like, as bad as I did, there was something that stuck, and now they're taking that and they're having their own influence on art educators of the future. So I think those are some of the most kind of rewarding experiences that I can recall with students.
Well, I bet.
Yeah.
And how do you feel about the future of art education, and maybe specifically, what kind of advice do you give for future art educators?
Art teachers, for multiple reasons that we probably won't get into here today, just have a kind of a platform or a venue in which they can make some really interesting and cool relationships with their students and have profound impact, for good or for ill. But I think I want to encourage my students to be aware of that and recognize that, in the art classroom, a lot of times they're dealing with feelings and emotions and identity, which is a huge topic right now. And so the art teacher, as a mentor and as a sort of a creator of a safe space for students to do that, is kind of a magical person in a way. Like that can sort of be portrayed, sort of on a Hollywood level, as like the sort of eccentric art teacher who, you're not really sure what that person's been up to before they go into the classroom. But you know, um, it's just an opportunity for an art teacher to recognize, some of the the burden and the beauty of the field. I always encourage them, to um, just remember that they're teaching people first and that they're teaching art second. I think that we have challenges as a field, certainly, and I recognize that what I hear from art teachers out there in the field is that, they're kind of, they feel a little bit kind of like they're fighting an uphill battle a little bit with regard to budget, with regard to, sort of being ostracized a little bit, at the end of the hall and the furthest hall away from, we don't have to hear them or smell what they're making, and, deal with all that weirdness going on in the art room. The experience that we had in the pandemic certainly showed some of the more difficult areas to do in art online. My dear colleague Hannah Gibran in sculpture was absolutely just beating his head against the wall trying to figure out how to do steel fabrication online. Um, I remember my ceramics colleague Jim Tisnato had his students come into the front of the building at certain times, pick up a bag of clay, take it home, uh, do something with clay at home. They didn't have wheels or anything like that, so they couldn't throw pots, but they could hand build. And then they bring those back at a given time, drop them off at the front of the school. He would fire them in the kiln. And I remember talking to him. He's like, man, this was the biggest headache I have ever had to experience. Um, so yeah, some of those kinds of areas don't seem to play out real well online, unfortunately. So still some strides to be made there, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so we're coming to a close. This has been very rich. We appreciate you letting us into your world.
Yeah.
I'm interested if you were to give your 18-year-old self advice, what advice would you give yourself?
I think maybe I would give my 18-year-old self the same advice I got when I was an 18-year-old, and I think it helped out. And I still tell folks who graduate from high school that I know this same piece of advice, and that's try to sit with somebody different at the calf at every meal. Maybe that's a lot harder than I remember it being. The moments of awkwardness that might have, been there at the beginning of each meal quickly disappeared. And I ended up making tons of friends that I never probably would have made otherwise. And I was able to experience things in college with those friends that I probably never would have done on my own. So that was a real easy kind of nudge for me to get out of my comfort zone. And I just really encourage folks who are going off to college, 18-year-olds, to try to take that little tiny step of faith.
That's excellent. I've heard others share how they had opportunities to shrink back in fear in some situation. They decided to step out, and how they can't imagine if they had not done that, what they would have missed out on, because there's so many rich things come from taking risk. Well, Robbie, thank you for this time. And I know there would be students who would love to connect with you, would love to get to know you more or ask questions. What's the best way for students to reach out to you?
Yeah, certainly. I've tried to capture everything on my personal website, which is robbiequinn.com. And in that site, I've got links to socials and information about some of my creative and research endeavors and my teaching, and so my music is also on my website, robbiequinn.com. And I'm thankful that God has given me a gift of music to be able to use to encourage people, to teach a little bit even, and I'm able to bring joy to people, hopefully, by the things I play, and I'm able to lead people in worship through singing at my church, which I love doing that.
I am so grateful that you are out there in these students' lives. Thankful you're there at ECU.
Me too. Yeah.
And thank you for this time.
I enjoyed it, guys. Thanks so much for taking some time to speak with me today.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that interview, and you can learn more as well as read about other Christian professors on our website, meettheprof.com, and you can search for professors by name or by state or even by college campus. And you can also find many helpful resources about questions that were in the interview and other ways of answering tough questions at cru.org, and that's cru.org. And college students, if you would like to ask a question to a professor and potentially be on the show, this is how you do it. Follow us on Instagram. It's Meet the Prof Official. And then upload us a video by direct message where you say your name, your college campus, and what year you are, and then ask your question. And you can ask more than one question. And hopefully then you can be featured on the show. And if you enjoyed this, would you please share this episode with a friend? Someone you think it would be helpful to. And please don't forget to follow or subscribe to the podcast. And if you're listening to this, but you would like to watch the videos of these interviews, we record them all and we put them on YouTube. So you can subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is Meet the Prof Official. And we would love to meet you there. And lastly, if you would like to financially support our Faculty Commons ministry with Cru, you can do so online by going to give.cru.org/0424344. So thank you for being with us. And until next time, we hope you feel encouraged to have a Christ-centered conversation on your college campus.